Hello, everybody. Good evening. And what you are tuning into tonight is my new show. This is week number 3 of the new show called Getting It Right, Premed Happy Hour. And of course, the right is a play on my last name. And Premed Happy Hour refers to the fact that this is happy hour for the country. And I'm in the central time zone, so it's 7 o'clock here. I know Easterners, it's 8 o'clock for you. And then out on the West Coast, you guys, it's 5 o'clock. And so we're all here in essentially happy hour time span. And so I thought to make this show, we would make it fun by having a cocktail or a glass of wine or a beer or something, and I'll tell you a little bit about what I was drinking that night. So I'm Dr. Scott Wright. I'm one of the advisors here at Medical School Headquarters, and it's nice for you to tune in this evening. I hope you find it beneficial. We have a fantastic show tonight. I'm super excited about it. A great guest who I think is going to really enliven the conversation about application. And she's going to talk about her story. And I think it will resonate with some of you out there, and certainly some of the lessons that she's learned as she's gone through the process of admission. And she is now ready to go to medical school this summer, and that's exciting for her. And we're going to get to talk to her here in just a moment or two. So I wanted to really welcome you all to the show. You can comment on YouTube. If you just comment on the show on our YouTube channel, or we have the form that you can fill out in order to ask a question if you wanted to do it anonymously, for example. We won't mention the name of the person. We'll just mention the question, and so, or the comment, whatever. So you can do that. So it's nice to see you all here. Great to see everybody, and love listening to the podcast. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. So great. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to our guest for tonight. And she has been a longstanding person in the life of the medical school headquarters gang. We have known, well, let me bring her on. We'll even talk about that. So this is Tyra. Hello, Tyra.
Hello.
And it's good to see you. And I was thinking back to how long you had been sort of actively participating with us in stuff. It's been maybe like 5 years or something.
Yeah, all the way back to I think my second semester of community college.
Wow. And now here you are on your way to medical school.
Yep.
So exciting. Well, Tyra, introduce yourself a little bit. Tell the gang that are tuned in what your things are all about you and kind of where you are, and we'll go into some detail in the questions later on. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Perfect. My name is Tyra-Lee. I just, not just, in December of 24, graduated from USF. So I'm currently in Florida. This is not a Floridian accent. I am originally from Johannesburg, South Africa. Immigrated here to pursue medicine. I am 3 weeks into marriage.
Woohoo!
Going really well so far. So
good. That's a good sign.
That's doing well. And yeah, I'm a big advocate in the medical world. It's probably what defines me the most as a future physician. And I just want to be here to help students understand that you can go from, being an immigrant in community college to all the struggles we're going to talk about tonight, and then still be able to pursue your dream.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, so that leads us right into, Tyra. We're going to have a brief conversation about South African alcoholic beverages, adult beverages, as we do each week. So tonight, I have brought with me a bottle of South African wine. It's called Lubanzi. And I found out by reading some stuff about Lobanzi. It's a fairly recent vineyard in South Africa. I forget exactly what area. I got it pulled up right here. It's from Swartland. You know where that is, Tyra?
Mm-mm.
Swartland,
You're probably
a
saying
highly regarded wine region in South Africa's Western Cape.
okay. So Cape Town, yeah,
Okay.
Cape Town.
Okay, good. And so it's from South Africa. I thought it was appropriate to have a South African wine while we were doing our South African guests and stuff. So I opened this wine this evening, and I'm letting it breathe a little bit. But I have it here in my glass, and it is a very nice shade of purple. What I would say is purple, and it is this particular wine is a red wine blend. So it has three different wines varieties in it: Shiraz, a Grenache, and a Mourvedre. Mourvedre, I think is how you pronounce it. Um, and it's really quite tasty. It would be considered, I think, sort of a red table wine that you would drink perhaps with dinner, or before with hors d'oeuvres or an appetizer of some sort. So very nice, very nice. It's very tasty, medium bodied, really nice kind of woodsy flavor to it. So it's very very nice. So if you want a taste of a South African wine, look for Lubanzi on your shelf of your grocery store or wherever. If you're 21, gotta mention that if you're 21. Now, Tyra, I know that you brought some with you. Not a wine though, a different one.
I did. So I don't drink, but South Africa is known for our parties and drinking. So I did. My favorite thing to suggest is one of my mom's favorite things, and it is amarilla. So the amarilla fruit is something that grows in South Africa. It's known for the elephants. The myth is that the elephants eat it and they get drunk. So it's like a creamy liqueur, and that's my mom's favorite. So she told me that I'm gonna show everyone that this is what you do.
I'm gonna look for that in my local liquor store soon. So thank you for bringing that to share with us as a show and tell. And I hope your mother enjoys that bottle since you obviously you won't be enjoying it. So, but so great. Well, Tyra, I know we've got a lot of questions from students, and I want to hear your story. So, where does this story begin for you? When you moved to Florida some years ago as an immigrant from South Africa, and my understanding is you pretty much had medicine on your mind even at that point. Tell us about that story and how that kind of progressed.
Yeah, so this is kind of what I talk about my seed. I was an athlete my entire life. I was on the South African style world team for karate, and I just fell in love with the anatomy of an athlete, right? I love the fact that you could go from being injured one season to winning the nationals the next season, right? And just figuring out how your body did that and why you could push it the way you could. And that was kind of my intro into it. And from there, kind of just exploring, I was like, I want to do medicine, and this is where I want to go with this. We had the opportunity to immigrate, and I was like, well, America's the best place for me to try and pursue this. Little did I know what the process was like. That's what I wanted to pursue. So when I got here, that was the goal, and we moved here with 2 suitcases each and $500 in our bank account, and we were like, cool. And then I started at community college because I didn't really know where or what to do and how to go about it. But that was kind of where the journey, started, and we just kind of pushed through the rest.
Yeah. Now you were fortunate, I think, to have enrolled at a community college where there was a professor that sort of took you under her wing.
Oh, shout out to Beth. Shout out to Professor McCullough.
Yeah.
Yes, so one of my chemistry professors actually had started a pre-health club 20 years ago at this stage, and they had invited me through like my Canvas courses to the meeting, and I'll be honest, they said there was going to be free pizza, and that's the only reason I actually.
I love that.
I tell people that all the time. I ended up being on the board of that national organization, and I only did it because of pizza. But no, she was really a guiding light to me. She kind of took this young kid who didn't know anything about what this process was going to be like, and she helped guide me through leadership and community service and starting to get what I needed for the application process. So it was just kind of having this one person who I was able to tell, hey, this is my passion. And, she was my sponsor and my mentor through it.
And you really, I think that often students, whether they're at a community college or a university, they often feel alone in the process, right? That they're just kind of flailing about, not really knowing what to do. How important is it to have somebody like your professor to sort of mentor you through some of this process?
Oh, I think it's the foundation. I honestly do. And I think, I was very lucky to have a physical being as a mentor in that regard. She didn't know as much about, she'd done it for so many years, she'd helped so many, but she also was someone who was watching Dr. Gray's podcasts and reading his books. And, we kind of made him our mentor as well. So finding a person who you can trust to consume their opinions about the process and hear their kind of stance on stuff, I think is so important, whether it's a physical person or even if you're finding it in books and podcasts and things like that.
Absolutely. And now, at some point along the way, and we'll just, I mentioned it earlier, you came into contact with Dr. Gray through, tell us a story how you came into contact with him or how that happened.
So he will say that I stalked him. I did not. So I actually started a research project at my community college with this professor I was talking about, and we were trying to identify the barriers of access to the medical school application, right, for our community college students, because I found that I wasn't the only one who didn't know how to get there. And through that, I went to go present a national poster in Washington, D.C. At the American Medical Student Association conference. And there was one person referenced on my poster, and it was Ryan Gray. And he walked through the poster session. And I was like, you have to look at my poster. And he was like, those are my stats. And I'm like, yeah, look, you're referenced, I promise. And he said to me, well, what's this research about? What are you passionate about? And tell me about it, and let's see if we can make something happen. And we did, 5 years later.
That's amazing. And I can recall it wasn't long after that that I came on with medical school headquarters mapped at the time. It was the company, and we just kind of met each other then and have known each other ever since. And it's been fun to walk through this journey a little bit with you, and kind of peer from the outside a little bit into, and what you've done and stuff. What are the barriers that you had to overcome? You referenced this research project and the poster presentation. What did you find out in that? What are these barriers?
Yeah, I think there's so many, and so many people experience different ones. I can tell you from my experience what I felt was the biggest ones for me and some of my friends. Starting at a community college, number one, we already do not have much research happening, right? Most community college institutions don't have something like that happening compared to a four-year university. So, when you start reading, oh, you need research experience and you need this and leadership experience, there's less clubs at my university or at my community college than there was at my university, right? Less leadership positions, less research positions, things like that. So I think that was one of the biggest barriers. I realized, I can't go into third year not having any of these experiences. I need to try and make them happen now in these first 2 years. And then, honestly, my biggest one was the financial aspect of it. There's a huge financial aspect, not only to going to college, but pursuing higher education in general. And I couldn't go on summer trips, or I couldn't go on, or I couldn't spend time working in a place for free, or a medical community for free. I had to work to put myself through school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to find what worked for me in that regard, because that was what I needed to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was tough, I'm sure, at times where you were working and going to school full time and doing all the things that you had to do. There were challenges with that, right? Um,
100%.
is it ever become, I'm sort of the mind that sometimes the challenges are also mental challenges, in terms of I get down on myself because I did X or Y or Z or couldn't do this or that, or these barriers are present and I don't know how to overcome them. So it depresses me and I get down about it and blah, blah, blah. Tell us about how you keep yourself going, motivating yourself to go through this arduous process.
Yeah, I think that's also, so many of us go through it in daily lives, never mind just high
Mhm.
achieving perfectionists who want to go to medical school. I think, for like one example, was a time when I was struggling to figure out how I was going to pay for university when I went over. And it really turned into this dark thing in my mind of, well, maybe you're just not good enough to do it. Or the first time I was getting a B in biochemistry, and a professor said to me, "Oh, well, maybe you're just not smart enough for my class." Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I think I phoned you guys crying about that. I think I
Yeah.
talked about that on a staff meeting once. So yeah, like it was those kinds of things where I just felt like I wasn't meant to be here, right? Like I wasn't meant to. And
Mhm.
kind of what number one kind of the thing is my family and myself had immigrated across the world for my dream, for me to do this, right? My parents were just as supportive and were working just as hard for
Mhm.
me to be where I was. I was in a long-term relationship with someone. We were long distance. He's now my husband. Um, and he was sacrificing years of being with me so that I
Mhm.
could be here. So I think it was really a good thing to turn around and be like, you're not the only one fighting for this.
Mhm.
Many people are fighting for
Yeah.
this as well. And then I think the second thing kind of came, this inner motivation of, okay, bet, I'm going to do it.
Mhm.
It kind of came this, well, if I can come here and do it, then it's going to be a miracle. So let's do it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a kind of a mixture. I get that you're saying it's a mixture of external
Mhm.
motivation, having those cheerleaders in your life that are there to kind of cheer you on, but then also an internal motivation that says, "Damn it, I'm gonna do this," and full speed ahead, and whatever, right? Uh,
100%.
yeah, yeah,
I
very.
don't think you could do this process without an internal motivation. And that's
Mhm.
something I say to people a lot when they're pursuing medicine and they're like, oh, for the money or for this. It's just not worth it if that's why you're pursuing it. Yes, external is great. My parents have never, my mom has asked 100 times if I'm sure I want to do this and not go into something easier. But for me, if you don't have that internally, if you're doing this for someone else or for your family, it's just not worth it, because it takes so much that you need to invest so much time in yourself and energy in yourself, and it's not worth it if if you're not going to wake up happy every day.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Tyra, tell me, at whatever comfort level you have, how did you do in school? I mean, were you a fantastic 4.0 student, or did you do great, or were you marginal, or to whatever specificity you want to say?
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
actually, undergrad was great. I was 3.98. I
There
got
you
one B my whole time, and it was the professor who made that comment.
go.
Um, there was just no catching up to him at that stage. So it was that professor. So biochem got me, but I had straight A's the rest of the time, and academically, I'm such a nerd. I really do. I love learning. I love research. I love doing projects. It's just kind of who I am. So
Yeah,
undergrad for me was really exciting and just honestly just such a blessing to go and do every day.
yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful to hear. Now, in the process, you at some point in the process got to the evil thing we call the MCAT. And tell us about, I know there's a story there, and I want us to fixate on this for just a little while to talk about your experience with the MCAT and how that played out for you.
Yeah, no, so like I said, went through undergrad, loved it, did really well, loved science, was up there. I'm gonna get a 520. Let's go. When I started studying, I was gonna be a 520. Um, and I know that sometimes high achievers can be very hard on themselves, and we can also be very overdramatic when we say things like, "Oh, I got a B," or, "I'm not getting 90%." But
Mhm.
I can honestly tell you, starting this conversation, that the MCAT was the hardest period of my academic life.
Mhm.
It was not just difficult in terms of the content wise, but I felt stripped as a person. Like, it was probably the only time when I sat and thought to myself, like, are you gonna be able to do this?
Mhm.
So that kind of leads to I got to the MCAT. I've taken the MCAT twice, which I swore I would never do as well. Um, I took the MCAT the first time and I got a 500, and I took the MCAT 2 or 3 months later after trying to get all the help I could get, and I got a 501. So we bumped up by one. My dad always says, "It's okay. You went up by one."
That's right.
So that's not a score I was aiming for by any means. But slowly through the process, I just started to realize that my mind didn't work the same way that the MCAT questions were asked.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think that's so challenging to overcome. And I had some of the best people, even at medical school HQ, sit down with me and the MCAT advisors there. And I think it's just if you're not programmed for it, it's a very difficult thing to overcome.
Mhm. Mhm. Which is one of the big challenges that a lot of students face is because it is an important part of the medical school admissions
Mhm.
process. And
100%.
we like to talk about how holistic things are, and I'm totally in agreement that they are holistic in terms of the way we view applications. But I'm saying that the metrics have a lot of in this process, both GPA and MCAT score. And so it's not something that you can certainly just approach in a superficial way, right? You have to really dive into it. And
100%. And I will tell you, I, I have never worked so hard in my life to
right.
not see progress, right?
Yeah.
That weekly writing my practice papers every week and not seeing an increase in score. And I'll tell you, it was cars. Cars was the biggest reason. I mean, in my cars, to get it above a 120 was, the struggle even sometimes. So my other subjects, I didn't do too badly in. Had that
Mhm.
marks been a bit higher, I could have been in that 505, 506 kind of range.
Mhm.
But I was not, like, my brain just did not know what to do with cars.
Right, right.
French poetry is the reason I was almost not gonna be a doctor. So it is, and, when it comes to competitiveness, like you say, I fully understand that. I was sitting there going, I can't be mad at the MCAT. You have to overcome this to
Yeah,
show
yeah,
your competitiveness with all these other incredible students.
yeah, yeah,
So it was just about buckling down and doing what I could do and knowing what I was as an applicant and pushing forward with that.
yeah. And now tell me, how did that feel? We were talking about the mental challenge. Emotionally, how did that feel for you? It must have been just a huge letdown and a huge question mark in terms of what's this going to mean?
Yeah. Well, I was defeated.
Yeah.
I honestly think, people are like, oh, it's just an exam or it's just a test. And I think if you've ever studied for the MCAT or taken the MCAT, knowing what this 8-hour kind of crunch is like and all the studying that goes into it and these minute little details that you obsess about. I honestly was seeing the score as a failure or as a potential reason why I shouldn't be a doctor. Or like I questioned myself. I was sitting there going, oh, well, this 3-digit score means you're not good enough to pursue this passion that you have. And that was really hard to overcome, I think, sitting thinking, well, maybe you're just not cut out for it. Maybe in undergrad you got lucky, maybe all these things. And it just defeated me. I lost a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
And I think that was the hardest part about the entire process is once I lost that confidence in myself, there was just no going back.
Yeah.
There was no building myself up again. And it took months after the MCAT to rebuild myself.
Yeah.
So it's hard, and it's hard on the people you love too. I remember just like being so selfish about having to study and, all the weight of everything else was on everyone else in my family. And I was cranky and miserable all the time. So it's a weight. It's a rough patch in your life.
Yeah. Now, how did so you talked about you were defeated. How did you get that back? How did you get your confidence back?
I think to get my confidence fully back took me a long time after the MCAT. I think during the process, what someone said to me was, look at the rest of your application. Are you going to submit it? And I think, I've spent these last 4 years truly, truly adding everything I could and showing who I was as a physician and proving to myself that I wanted to do this. And this was my goal. And I think when I looked at that, I went, the score cannot be the reason someone doesn't see my passion. So I'm going to put it forward because I didn't have a third in me. I did not have a third MCAT in me. I would not have got there. It just, I would have had to take another year. That would have been the only way. And I said to myself, I'm confident in who I am outside of the score. And that's what I'm going to put forward.
Yeah.
And I did. And that is what worked out. But that was where I had to see myself because no amount of people telling me, oh, but you're so smart, or oh, this or that didn't help, So it was really just looking at who I was and knowing I'm going to be a good doctor. Guys, take me.
Yeah, right. Now, we get to that point then. You submit your application. You submit it with the 501 and the 398 GPA. And in addition, you've got lots of good experiences, right? Tell us a little bit about what you're bringing into the process.
Yeah, so that was definitely my strongest suit. I felt like I had done a good amount of stuff to show my interests and passions. I did research, not only my own research that I started nationally, but I also did clinical research for 2 or 3 years. I had, at that stage, presented a huge amount of poster presentations, things like that. I had publications in magazines and spotlights and those kinds of things. Then in leadership terms, I was the pre-medical trustee. I oversaw 100 pre-med chapters across the country of one of the largest medical student organizations. So, and I major roles throughout that entire organization as well. So I felt like I had developed who I was as a physician and what I wanted to do. I was an advocate. I love doing community service work. I was a big part of my community and what, they needed. So I think that was to me what I brought to my application was, hey, I've done the work and I want to keep doing it.
And then you had to work to communicate that both in writing in the application and in the secondary apps, as well as in an interview setting verbally. And what are the challenges that you faced in trying to develop and tell your story to the best that you could to people who had no idea who Tyra was or is? Yeah.
Yeah. I'll start off, before I do challenges, I'll start off with something I think what went right and why. kind of, I felt like throughout that time of undergrad, I was truly reflecting. I felt like continuously I was looking at what I was doing and being incredibly intentional. What can I say about this? What is this project going to do for me? Is this just going to be on my CV, or can they ask about it in an interview? I think I was very intentional. So when I got to the actual process, my mindset was be you. It truly was be you. And I think the biggest thing that scared me and what was difficult was actually just being authentic,
Mm,
right? I think I was scared to be authentic because I was afraid that that would drive people away, or they would look at me like I wasn't, you know, the smart put together person. And I was very honest and open about my life and questions that I'd had asked to me. And I
mm,
think that was kind of the hardest thing, was to just be open and really just write who you are in your story. And I
mm,
think the second hardest thing for me was truly sitting with that introspection of, like the why you want to go to the school. There were a lot of schools that once I started thinking about the why, I was like, I don't really want to go to this school,
mm,
right? Or thinking about, them talking about maybe being an MD PhD and looking at that essay and being like, I really don't want to do that. So I think it was being really honest with myself as well
mm,
about what I was putting down on the paper, and not just trying to say what they wanted me to say.
mhm, mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. So you get to the application, you push the submit button, and it's on its way. You begin to fill out the secondary applications and do the things, and then you wait, and for those interview invitations to come. What's that like? That waiting process?
Yeah, I mean, I will be honest that the I applied MD and DO, and the DO process did come a little bit quicker, right? So that kind of helped. Um,
Mhm,
in a sense, I kind of started seeing stuff already into that summer. But the first month you've just got to try and forget about. It's like when you're waiting for your MCAT score, right? It's really just letting the universe take it, which I'm a control freak. I'm so bad at. But it was really just, I've done it. I need to now keep myself busy. I worked a lot. I got to travel with you even at some
mhm.
stages.
Right?
Um, so it was stuff like that. It was really just like, okay, well, you've done it, you've pursued it, continue your life, and we'll see where it goes.
Mhm.
And I think that was the only way you'd get through it.
Yeah, for sure. So then you start hearing from schools. You get a few school invitations going, and what was it like getting that first invitation?
Oh, I wish I'd had it on video. I like to record everything, right? If you've seen my social media, I do a lot. And it came through, and I saw the tagline of the email, and I immediately just clicked it. Um, then I saw that I was going to get an interview, and I said to my mom going into this, all I need is an interview. I just need them to see that I'm willing and capable, and I'm
Mm,
going to do this. So
mm,
I think for me, that was kind of my reality, where it was like, you can make this happen. Like this can happen. Like you're gonna get in the door.
mhm.
And to me, that was probably one of the moments where I was like, okay, I think this is gonna be a successful cycle.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that it was like way too early to even think that, but that was where I
It
kind of
was
got my
just your intuition, though,
it
right?
was where I got my spark back. It
Yeah.
was where I was like, okay, I might not shine the best on, a score or even on paper, but I can talk, and I'll talk to you. And, so I think that was kind of my spark.
Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. So you get to the end of the process. Tell us, how many interviews did you end up getting?
I ended up getting 8 interview invites.
Uh-huh.
Two of them were asynchronous invites, so you kind of do a video question thing.
Mhm,
Some
mhm,
people know if they apply to those schools. So there was those two, and then there were um, 4 in person
mhm.
interviews.
Wow.
So yeah, it was quite a good round of them. I did
Mhm.
travel a little bit as well for the
Yeah,
interviews.
yeah.
So I ended
And
up
then,
with about 5 real interview, real.
yeah, nice. And so let me just also say um, how excited I am to report that there was success in those interviews. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I loved the interviews. Honestly, it was my favorite part of the entire application.
Mhm.
I, number one, loved the people I was interviewing with. I made very, very good friends in an hour, kind of at my interview. I think we all trauma bonded. But looking around, I was kind of like, yes, like I would pick these people to go to school with. And I think that's how I knew I built my list well. I
Yeah.
knew I'd picked the right schools because I was in these rooms and I was going, I'd be happier. I'd be happier. And then I
Mhm.
kind of kept telling myself, like, are you just, do you have like colored glasses on? Are you just like, is everything just rosy? Um, but it is. It's, you can go for an interview and you can see yourself being at the program if it's a program that, you've looked into and know it's right. So
Mhm.
that was really, I think where I was like, my school list was what helped me get to where I was.
And how did you make that school list? What method did you use to do that?
That's a great process. So obviously working in the pre-medical space and with, the company for so long, I'd been exposed to a huge amount of the schools. And, me and Dr. Gray often say there's 170, plus medical schools in the country. So how do you choose 30 or 20 to apply to? I kind of took the first step was take a map of America, and anything that touched Canada disappeared. Like I don't do the cold, guys. I'm from Africa. I've never seen snow.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, okay, there's 170. How do you start break? And so people laugh at me about it, but I'm like, that was legitimately how I started because I couldn't look at all of them. So that was kind of my first push. And then really just throughout undergrad, I was working on my school list as well. I did not only work on my school list when I was applying. I was going to these conferences and working with these students where I was taking notes constantly about who was happy where, right? Who was promoting their programs? What did I like about certain programs that I saw? And that was kind of also very helpful when it came down to my selecting schools and being like, well, I know people there that have loved it. Or I know people there that, would choose a different medical school and kind of cutting that down. I'm in Florida, so I'm lucky to have a lot of in-state schools.
Mhm.
Um, so already 11, 12 of my schools were taken up by in-state schools. So
Mhm.
it was really just selecting, the couple few that I really loved and that I felt I as a student was good for, and then shooting my shot that way.
Yeah, yeah. Now, what was it like when that first acceptance email came, or however you got to know it?
It was a call. It
A
was a
phone
call.
call.
She
Okay.
called me, and this lady, I literally picked up the phone and I'm like, be calm, be cool, collected. And she told me they were offering me a position, and I literally just burst into tears. Like, it was just and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm crying. And she's like, no, it's okay. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I just couldn't but cry. And she's like, I'm gonna send you the email. Don't worry. And she kind of let me go. And
Right.
I was trying to phone my husband now at the time of my boyfriend, and I was trying to phone him to get him to pick up. And then I was trying to decide, am I gonna tell my mom now? Am I gonna wait till she gets home? Am I gonna, and it was like 2 o'clock. She gets home at like 6. That was
Yeah.
the longest 4 hours of my life. Trying not to listen, if I have a son in NDA, it's gonna say, "And not my mother." Like, that you know, it was the hardest 4 hours, but that day, I was just my dad literally was like, "I don't think I've ever seen you this happy."
Wow. Wow.
But
That's
I
so
mean,
cool.
that's the
That's so
truth of
cool.
it.
So you ended up with several acceptances,
Mhm.
both from DO schools and from at least one MD school. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm wondering how you then came through the process of deciding of these schools that I've been accepted to, which one am I going to go to? How did you make that decision?
Yeah, I I could talk about this for 4 hours. I think, this was a decision that happened over 2-3 months. I don't want anyone to think it was something taken very lightly. But what it came down to is I was very happy with the 5 acceptances that I got. I could see myself at any of the programs.
Mhm.
And then, there was 2 that I was like, well, these other 3 are kind of better. Like, I like them more, so that you could kind of break that down. And I really 3 of them I sat with for a long time. One of the DO programs in state here also had me in a chokehold for a long time. I loved their program. So it was kind of just like really starting to look at what I want and who's going to get me there and where am I going to be happy. And I think all 3 of the schools I would have thrived at. I think I would have loved each and every one of them. The first thing that kind of drew me was curriculum wise. The one school is problem-based learning, where they are continuously working in small groups and they are doing active clinical learning style, where the other one was a bit more traditional. And I'm a non-traditional kind of studier. So that was kind of my first, like, oh, this one is weighing on me. The MD-DO question, I think a lot of people are like, isn't that what you thought about first? No, actually, I really didn't. I've worked with incredible DOs and MDs. I applied to both because I was okay getting into both. I know what kind of physician I want to be, not necessarily in a specialty. I have my interests, and I definitely think I'm going to be more on the primary care side, emergency med side, than neurosurgery. I think I talk too much to be in an OR. But that was my thing. Like, I kind of just started to weigh up where I was going to be the happiest. And then a big factor for me is I'm going to have a husband.
Yeah.
There was this, it's not just about me anymore. Everyone was like, do what's best for you. And I'm like, this man's moving across the world to come here to continue to help me pursue my dreams. And that matters, right? And his happiness matters, and where we're going to end up as now husband and wife matters. And that played a big role in really looking at in-state programs and going, well, the benefit to an in-state program, being around family, being around a support system. The out-of-state program was miles away and in the cold. Wasn't I that was one thing I even said in my interview. I said, how am I going to handle the cold? But I would have if I needed to.
Right.
But it was looking at that and going, okay, well, if you have to go to the hospital at 4 o'clock for a rotation and you have to shovel snow to get to your car, and then you have to leave your husband of 6 months and tell him, oh, well, you're just on your own, I have to study. Like, what kind of life was I starting to build for us and for myself there? And I'm someone who I only do things I'm passionate about. So I knew I needed to be passionate about what I was doing in order to thrive.
Yeah.
And the in-state DO program, take MD and DO out of it, was the better choice for the physician I want to become, the learning style that I thrive in, and then the family aspect of where I'm going to have a support system and be comfortable.
Wonderful. What it strikes me, Tyra, so much about this whole conversation is how thoughtful and how intentional you were with everything that you did. Nothing was, you were investigating, you were researching, you were reading, you were experiencing, you were reflecting. All throughout this process, you were doing everything through an intentional method, right? And that strikes me so much, is how important this job, this profession, this lifestyle, this calling, this passion, however you want to refer to it, that's how important it was to you, and it was reflected in how you went about the process, right?
I definitely think so. And I think that was my thing, is I think a lot of students are trying to prove to a committee that they're going to be a good med student. And I think I was trying to prove to myself that I would be happy and thrive as a physician, right? That was my goal. I was like, I'm only going to be a med student for 4 years. I'm going to be a physician for the rest of my life.
Right.
And I worked with incredible physicians who I had seen that in, and I'd gone, okay, well, can I do that? Can I do what you do?
Yeah.
And that was really where it was. And, when you are in those hard times where you're lying on your bedroom floor crying your eyes out at a possible C on your midterm, whatever, those are the moments where you sit there and you go, well, are you doing this for, like, are you going to quit? Because I remember during the MCAT, my husband said to me, quit. You don't have to be a doctor. No one's forcing you to be a doctor. And I still remember looking at myself and being like, excuse me, no. Like, so that was it, right? It wasn't an option. So how was I going to get over those barriers?
Right. That's right. Well, I want to get to some of the questions that have been posed. If that's okay, if can you hang around for a little bit longer and answer some questions? That'd be great. The first one I want to address just briefly is from the YouTube, and it says, "Why are we talking about wine?" And I like that question. It's because it's happy hour. It says pre-med happy hour at the top of the screen. It's happy hour, so we have alcoholic beverages. That's why. Anyway, okay, now that's it. That's all I wanted to address. So now we have a question from William in the pre-med. Here is his question. Maybe there's a first one. Sorry. If someone gets into a DO school because of grades or other reasons and wants to be a surgeon, what can you do to stand out in residencies? And then he asked, but I know if you want to be a cardiologist, you can do DO, attend internal medicine, and then fellowship easier. So that it's another path, but still want to get to be a surgeon. Then what can you do as a DO student? So what is your perspective on this? You for example, you said, primary care is really interesting to you, maybe emergency medicine. How did you look at the schools that you were admitted to and judge this issue of what's going to help me get to that point down the road?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think first to address, if someone gets into a DO school because of grades or other reasons, I applied to DO with the exact same things I applied to MD, knowing that both programs were competitive. Both programs, had minimums and had a pool of incredible students. And really what I looked at is, yes, there is still somewhat a stigma around DO. But let me tell you, there is also a stigma around community college students. There's also a stigma around, students who come from lesser name schools than the Ivies. There's stigma in everything, right? And we've kind of got to a stage where there's so many incredible physicians across the country that have had all these different paths. I wasn't looking at it like, oh, if I go to this DO school, because of the DO, I'm not going to get a fellowship or I'm not going to get a residency, because I've seen people do it, right? And I've still got 4 years. So there's still 4 years of people in front of me who are doing it and already closing that gap of stigma. So it really was, if I wanted to pursue neurosurgery or cardiology, maybe I would have to have had a harder look at if that was going to be a barrier that I wanted to overcome, or if I felt I was going to face. In Florida, my physicians I've worked with and the programs here are very DO friendly, right? If you go onto your local hospital's site and you go to your cardiology site and you see there's 2 DOs, then I wasn't worried, right? When I did the emergency med one, there were so many DOs in the program, and I was like, they're clearly not as biased. So that was it was still intentional, right? Yes, there is a stigma. Where is the stigma? Don't apply to those places. Right, and that would be for residency's sake.
All right, good. Thank you, William, for the question. Here's another one. This one says, doing a DO is not bad. Doing an MD is better. Just makes everything easier going through med school. Why don't you address your thoughts about that one?
I would love to, because I can't wait. And I have MD colleagues, and both my best friends got into MD programs this year. So they're going to be my MDs, and I'm going to be the DO. And I can't wait to say, of course, we're not the same. I studied 350 more hours than you did, because we have OOM, which is the body manipulation that osteopathic medicine is known for. So, yeah, it's harder in a sense of you adding an entire language onto this language of medicine you're learning. I'm not just doing biochem that week or cardiology that week. I'm also then doing OOM, manipulation as well that week.
Mhm.
Right? So I am adding to that kind of thing. The program that I have chosen to go to is a long-standing program. It does have a lot of the connections with the hospitals and stuff like that. But there are DO programs or even newer MD programs that don't have the rotations associated with these big major hospitals that you can stay in one place and do all your rotations.
Mhm.
So, yes, in that regard, it's making medical school a little bit more difficult. You know,
Mhm.
it's not then as easy. But to me, it was, it's okay. I'm going to study more and know more. And
Mhm.
I'm up for the challenge.
Mhm. This is a simple one. What year did you apply?
2025, 2026. I'm still currently in the cycle.
Yep.
So starting school, so like recently, so starting school in August, well, July.
This coming summer. That's
Mhm.
great. Um, I think we've answered this one. How did you decide your number of schools you applied to?
My number specifically was financial.
Mm.
Financially, I'd kind of put together how much I could pay. The application process is an expensive process, and even fee assistance and things like that. I had to think about travel and secondary application costs and stuff. So I kind of applied, I think, to 26
Mm-hmm.
was mine. I did apply to a couple extra because of my MCAT score. Um, but yeah, I think 26 was my number, and it was financial and just what schools I was passionate about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting comment here from one person. One of the best vascular surgeons I work with is a DO trained. So that's a nice,
Mhm.
very nice comment there. Thank you. Thank you. What is it, Raj? That's a great comment. And we had a couple from the internet, from the website that I wanted to address. And one of them you pointed out, Tyra, earlier. The question says, "Hey there, headed in to take my MCAT this weekend. Not expecting a great score, probably a 502. I have a good GPA, 386 cum, 3.8 science. Best tips for applying despite my low MCAT score." What do you think?
Yeah, so first I'm going to say, let's get delusional for a second. You haven't taken it yet, so you don't know it's a low score. And if you got a 502, it would still be better than mine, so I still think it's fantastic.
Right.
Um, so go in with that mindset, right? Don't go in. I went into my first one already thinking like, you know, I wasn't gonna do the best. I thought I was gonna I thought I killed my second one. But that's the thing, right? Don't go into it with that. In terms of then best tips for applying, if you have that, so let's say your score comes back and it's a 510 or a 505 or a 500, and you've now got to decide. I gave someone else advice the other day, and I said, what do you want? Do you want to go to Harvard and or go to an MD PhD program, or because then you probably need to retake to be competitive with the class of people you are going to be competing, I hate that, but competing against for the seats.
Right.
I knew that my score was enough to get me into the places that I felt would be the best for me and still succeeded what I wanted. Had I wanted to, you know, go into these really, really extreme programs, I would have probably had to have taken another year. So I think that's my best advice is look for what you truly want and what you're truly going to be happy with. And if you are truly happy with that 502 because of where you're going to go, doesn't matter then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's the question. Ask yourself that.
Yeah. Very good. Excellent. Excellent response. Um, so, and then we have a nice comment. Thank you, Tyra, for taking time to answer our questions. I have several for yours and Dr. Wright's consideration. We'll try to get to some more of those also. But I wanted to go to one other one. Um, and this one is an interesting question about the mechanics of it. Would you put being a clinical research coordinator, that's what this person says they are, as a paid clinical experience or a research experience on the AMCAS application section, activities section? And this is a good question. And I want to answer this specific question, but before we do that, I want to ask you, Tyra, that there are times when you have to make a judgment
Mm-hmm.
about which category you're going to choose for a certain activity, right? And so sometimes, tell us about how you manage that. How did you do
Yeah,
that?
that's perfect. I like this one because I was actually a clinical research coordinator. So that to me, I had started off in an internship that was very much based on lecture, and I had people teaching me how to do research and things like that. And then I had this position that I was offered because of the internship that was a paid position. So I broke that kind of stuff down, and I had research as in all the other stuff that I'd done outside of it. And for that one, I'd put my employment, right? That was paid clinical work because I was being paid to work and take blood and follow the patients through these kinds of studies. So I kind of been able to split it up if you have multiple research things
Mhm.
that you can do. But I was also again very intentional with those. I try to hit one in each bucket.
Yeah.
So I definitely went leadership and then community service. Even though I had a leadership role in it, I was still doing community
Right.
service, right?
Right.
So I
Right.
definitely try to hit all the boxes. Again, I didn't want to tick off the boxes, but I also wanted them to look at my application and know just because I had leadership positions in all of my positions doesn't mean I just did leadership.
Right. That's right. And I think that's a really good way to look at it, is that you want to diversify your experiences. And so if there's one particular one that could fall into multiple categories potentially, that's when you have to look at the whole picture, right?
Mhm.
The whole picture. What is this whole picture presenting? And I want to hit as many of those as I can in the process. So that's very good, Tyra. I knew you'd have a great response to that. You're awesome, Tyra.
I love it. You guys told me everything I know. Everything I
Oh,
know.
yeah, that's great. Um, so here is a question. Dr. Gray talks a lot about how we should write our personal statement by showing and not telling. Should we write the secondary essays like this as well, or just answer the prompt almost as if we were in an interview? This is a really interesting question because I think it does recognize that the secondary applications are a little bit different in that they're a lot more specific,
Mm.
right? How have you, for example, how have you demonstrated a alignment with our mission? So not just do you align with our mission, but how have you demonstrated that alignment with
Mhm.
our mission? This is not the time to, in my view, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about this, Tyra, is that I think that in secondary applications, because of their general specificity, in general, they're pretty specific. Um, you have to just answer the question. Now, if that kind of leads to a story, then that's great. But if it doesn't, then that's the way that it's got to be. Not all of them are going to lend themselves very well to stories.
Mm.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And I think what it comes down to is your personal statement really is something that you need to reflect on in such a deep way, right? And then your secondaries need to be these things that it shouldn't be something that you had to necessarily pull out of someone else or think. Secondary is what, when I was answering it, I was thinking about the patient interactions I had. What
Mhm.
came to mind?
Mhm.
What was the first thing that came to mind when I read, about this experience or about this? So I think that's really good. And you'll see even in interviews, using the storytelling in an interview helps a lot as well.
Yeah,
Right? So not
absolutely.
just, the interviewers are going to ask you questions about what's in your application, right? That's what they've read about you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of like that story still translates into secondaries and into the interview process.
Absolutely. 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 Very good. Well, we are out of time for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I have one last question, Tyra, and I ask this of all my applicants or all my guests on the show, rather. Currently, what makes you the most happy in life?
Oh, my husband.
Oh, that's a sweet answer. Very good. Very good. Well, thank you, Tyra, for your being with us tonight. I appreciate your honesty and your forthrightness. I think the those gathered here together tonight have benefited from it, and I certainly have enjoyed getting to see you again. And hopefully we'll get to see each other in Orlando uh,
Mhm.
in April, and we'll see. So take care, Tyra, and everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we'll be here again next week with more exciting things to talk about with regard to the application admissions process. We're also going to begin talking a little bit more about ethics and how ethics translates into in the application process into interview questions as well as into Casper responses
Mm.
and preview questions and how to prepare for that, how to kind of get yourself going and ready for that kind of stuff. So we'll talk about that some over the next several meetings. All right. Well, good to see everybody. Take care. Have a good night, and we will check on you later. Oops.